Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Coworking Values Podcast. And before we leap into this week's episode, a word from our delicious smelling sponsor, Cobot.
This episode is brought to you by Cobot, our leading management software for co-working spaces, office hubs, and flexible workspaces around the world. You know, one of the best things about Cobot is that it is produced by people who manage a co-working space and know the ins and outs of the main problems and issues bugging co-working managers. So if you want more time for your coworkers and community, check out Cobot at cobot.me and take your co-working management to the next level.
And thank you for that, Zelko. So on the line today is a chap called Gareth, and there's lots of other stuff he does, but he definitely has the best co-working space promotional video in the world ever, which we'll put in the show notes, and I love. So other than that, Gareth, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Yeah, well, that video certainly it was a lot of fun, and at least being known for jumping on tables and dancing around, that's all fun. So I started my first co-working space back in 2011, which is called Welsh Ice in South Wales. And then we exited from that business and started a new company called Town Square. And our mission really is about how do we create these town centre meeting places, these community spaces in town centres all across the UK.
Can you say a little bit about what Welsh Ice was and is, because it's more than just it's what always attracted me to it, and I know a lot of good people there, like Annie Brown and Steve, the anti-cell guy. It's more than just a co-working space.
Yeah, it's always been something I've been a little bit kind of uncertain of, is that definition of co-working. We never really publicly called ourselves co-working, but co-working is probably the industry that we best match with. So, for us, it's much more about community. And what we found, I think, was that co-working sometimes seemed like quite an exclusive thing. So we really focused on how do you create a really inclusive environment. So ICE is still going. It's about 35,000 square foot. Is that 3,500 square meters, I think, is probably easy maths. But it's just the people, really. There's about 600 people there. There are people who kind of are passionate, care about what they do, and everything that we focused on was how do you help people to align with what matters to them. So, what we found, co-working is one part, and co-working more describes the kind of ethos and the business model rather than really describing the community of people that end up emerging and meeting there. So, yeah, that was the kind of where we developed it. And then 3 years ago, there were four of us as directors. Two of us left to start Town Square, looking at, we did it in one place, and it's not, Caerphilly, most people listening probably don't know where Caerphilly is. They might not have heard of it unless they like cheese. And so it wasn't a place where people expect spaces like this to exist, especially at that scale. And what we really felt quite passionately about was that, and I think this is what's being highlighted during this period right now, is that there are amazing, talented, passionate people who live in every corner of every community across not only the UK, but the world. And I think a lot of the kind of political rhetoric at the minute is about this sense of being left behind. And that's just not the case. These communities exist. And what we really wanted to prove with Town Square, as we did with ICE, is that no matter where we go in the UK, we meet amazing, talented people. And our goal really is to help generations of people to realize you don't need to leave for the big city in order to feel creatively, emotionally fulfilled, get your potential kind of fulfilled, and work on exciting projects. So yeah, that was the real test, and that's what's been really fun through what we've done since then.
That's very in line. Like, one of the reasons I wanted to do this with you today is because I discovered the 15-minute city a few months ago. It seems later than everyone else in the world, but and I really, really believe in that. I've always wanted that kind of, leaving my house and wandering around the corner and everything there. And it always annoyed me. I don't know if annoy is the right word, but I was always confused at why people insisted on going to the center of the city every day and being in a train and, slowly dying doing that. And kind of like hope that people, now they've tasted the fact they don't have to, do all this unnecessarily traveling and can engage in their local community more. There's people I know who lived in Rochester and they would travel into London to do something they could do at their laptop in Rochester. And I know people in Rochester who tried to start a co-working space, but it wouldn't work because all the creative people wanted to go into London. And I get why they did, but it's kind of like you don't actually need to do that. And there's people like you in your area, and that's what I hope will come out of this. What do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly the way we've been seeing things. I think more people are realizing now the kind of quality of life stuff that comes into having a lot of architects and city designers and things were talking about, we don't need big living spaces because we live outside of the home. And that was great when we could all go to coffee shops and restaurants and street food festivals and things, with our spare time. But now we're realizing that actually having that little bit of extra space for ourselves, or just to kind of go and sit outside in our gardens, or even just get out of the house, is super valuable. And chances are, if you're in an urban center, it's a lot harder to have some of those kind of things within your budget. So we're seeing a lot of people who are talking about moving back to the communities we're talking about. And I mean, I'll give an interesting story of one of our members whose husband had, they were based in London. Their husband had taken a job in the Northwest, and so they were forced to relocate to go up there. And they moved to Wrexham, which is where we have one of our spaces. Again, most people don't know Wrexham unless they know lager and football. And it was, one of those kind of feelings, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, where she just felt like that was it. Like she had an idea for a startup, but it was never going to happen now because, she was going to the arse end of nowhere, and that's it. And what she got in our community was her first members of staff. We connected her with investors. We connected her with this kind of community that pushed her on. And now she ticked over 20,000 sales on Amazon last month. She's raised investment. She's working with high street retailers to list her product. And I think it's just that sense that a lot of people have, the idea of moving home, if your home isn't one of these major urban centers, is that's the end of it. That's your life is over. And for a lot of young people, they feel like you've got to get out to get on. And I think what we're seeing is now, I put out a survey on Twitter this week about how people have used their spare time from not commuting. And it's really cool to see people who are spending more time having breakfast and bedtime stories with their kids, that they never could have had before, and seeing those kind of milestones, through to just people who like having a lie-in because it means they can stay up watching movies the night before, or, it's people use it in different ways. And like what I see as being the future for co-working is really playing to that lifestyle element and helping people realize that being able to, exactly what you're saying, being able to walk to work and spend time with equally cool people who live in your community but otherwise have to commute outbound, it just doesn't make any sense to carry on that path. So yeah, that's the stuff that I think it's a deeply tragic time for us as a society, but there will be moments of change that come from it.
So what are kind of, I mean, this next segment can go two ways. It's like, what are the steps co-working space community managers, owners can take? And then is there anything you can, I don't know why I'm saying, is there anything? I know there is stuff you can point us to that will, because as I've, run around talking about this, some people need to see evidence of, for instance, someone in our local area said the other day, co-working, that didn't work. And I said, I looked like somewhere between offended and shocked. I'm like, what do you mean co-working didn't work? And he said, this company called WeWork tried it in the States and they all fell apart. And I was like, mate, that is not co-working. And I sort of, picked him up and thumped him against his van and set him straight on the topic. But it's and the neighborhood app?
Yeah.
I put a message in the neighborhood app saying, does anyone know somewhere to work around here? And if I'd put a, plumber for sale or slightly racist comment in there, everyone would have jumped in, but no one reacted to my anyone know of a co-working space in our local area post. And I wonder if it's one, because, I'm a weirdo, but partly they don't know that way of working, or they don't know what that means. I did put workspace in there.
But I think your example there is one that everyone involved in co-working will know of. As soon as they say co-working, people, it's just human instinct, they go to WeWork. And it's an issue. And we were avoiding using the term co-working from the early days because it had this association with hipsters and unicorns and all of this stuff that we don't, that doesn't, it's not real. None of it's real. And what we're really interested in is working with real people who are passionate about what they do, who've got great professional experiences and careers, and who are working hard to feed their kids and pay their mortgage. And I think co-working has a brand issue right now. Co-working is seen as being a luxury, or it's seen as being a trendy thing. And we need to work together to move it towards people realizing this is an essential piece of urban infrastructure. This is why we went with this kind of name of town square, is that all of these pieces of civic meeting space are gone. They don't exist anymore. There's no way you can just go and sit and meet with friends unless you're buying a coffee or buying lunch or anything like this. And so this idea of a co-working space feeling intimidated because you don't have the right round glasses, or your beard isn't quite stubbly enough. And I'm saying that from the perspective of it's predominantly white men as well, right? I'd say that knowing, the kind of irony of us talking about that. But this is the image that co-working has. And unless we can show, in my opinion, that co-working has a place in the rebirth of communities, of town centers as destinations, and that's the opportunity, right? Because there are a lot of people who are tackling this issue. Unless we can do that, there's just no point us having any more conversations.
Yeah, I really agree with that, and that's when when people talk on websites about co-working spaces of overdoing the entrepreneur, creative collaboration community. And it's like, what do you mean by that? And there's co-working spaces I've been in where people did you ever read the book Rework by the Basecamp folks?
Yeah, no. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. I didn't read Rework. Yeah.
But in Rework, there's a line which is about 8 years old now, and it says, enough with the term entrepreneur. It's like loaded with privilege and class and, a dynamic, and why don't you just call people starters? And I really, I'm going to go and post that in a minute. I've been reunited, is that there's so many people that just start businesses. They start there's one I know who's an IT support company for schools, and they wouldn't say I'm an entrepreneur in a co-working space, but they serve their local community with IT support, and the list goes on forever. But making it into this super cliquey, and it's often, I've ranted about this forever. There's a lot of imagery. It has improved now. I don't think it's just because I've been talking about it. I think just people became more aware, but I'd like to think that was me. So much of the imagery in the early days, like 5 years ago, around Shoreditch, it was beautiful white men drinking coffee and staring at Apple computers, doing co-working and coding.
Apple computers, which, by the way, cost about $2,000, right? So, even the idea of that is a step of privilege which people can't relate to. And by the way, we've done impact. So we're a B Corp. I should say this. So our kind of social and environmental impact is as important as our kind of commercial impact. That's the way we see the world. And we do impact reports, impact surveys on a regular basis. And we did one during the kind of lockdown on our space in Wrexham, and we had members saying, they feel more proud to be of the town. And that this is something which is really important, because like a lot of town centres, there's a bit of a reputation of, there being a big problem with homelessness and drug addiction and things. And people feel more proud and feel more of the town. And then there's other stuff, like one of our members who's an accountant as well, by the way. So he tracks this stuff, saying he now spends half as much on Amazon as he used to before he was a member of the space, because next day is never going to be as good as same day. And so that kind of stuff, that gives you a good reason to have these spaces in your town centers, right? Because it delivers tangible value to communities. We've had so many businesses in the area, cafes, restaurants, small businesses saying, your community has saved our business. We would not be in business if it wasn't for the people you bring into town. But no one wants to put that on a poster, right? Because they don't want to create the impression of being vulnerable. But that's the picture we're seeing, and that's the story we need to start telling. I saw that there was some really interesting kind of guidance put out by the New Economics Foundation about how they think there should be 100 new co-working spaces created across the UK to help self-employment in response to COVID. And we all know what will happen. If this was a government initiative, we all know what would happen. It would fail, and it would fail spectacularly. And we know, as community managers, as community leaders, as designers of spaces, the things that work and the things that members see through. And we don't want to create, the 21st century job center for entrepreneurship or for starters or for freelancers. That's not the answer. The answer is trying to build something which is much more community focused.
I love it. Two things to back up those points there are like Kofi has, as we've been talking about the 15-minute city and locally and everything like that, like young Kofi works we'll link to his podcast in the show notes. He works with young people in Hackney on a program called Urban MBA, which he's just launched. He's launched this, with cohort, if you like, with ARC, which is a co-working space in Hackney Downs. So they're going to run those programs together, and which is a great thing to do anyway. But when young people are, being local and have something to do, they have more. I know crime goes down in the area because people's commitment, at any age, goes up, and it becomes a safer environment. And there was one other thing I wanted to shout out there. Is there's in London, which I'm sure you're aware of, Gareth, there's the affordable workplace scheme run by the Mayor of London, and Islington and Space 4 run that together in Islington, and we've been doing some calls around finding out more about how to get that going in other areas around London. And one of the things that came up there that stuck with me is that for every time someone spends £1 in the local area with a local business, that pound goes around 4 times. And when you go and spend it with a major chain, that pound goes in the cash register and then disappears to probably the Cayman Islands or something. It's like that's. So the more we, to back up your point, the more we spend locally, the more wealth stays in the high street. But we just don't really think about doing that. I was quite taken with the Amazon claim there. I never thought of it like that. Yeah,
I think people broadly get the whole kind of buy local thing, and there's. I think there's a really difficult conversation right now about what good work is, whether you're a freelancer or an entrepreneur, or whether you're just you just have a kind of regular 9-to-5 everyday job. And in a lot of these communities, working in McDonald's is a good job. It's a stable job. It's safe, it's legal, it's there are good career progression opportunities and training opportunities. It's a good job. But if we look at that from, exactly what you're saying, how much money stays in the local community, how much of what they do is ethical, how much of it is not taking into consideration the externalities from, the impact of selling this scale of burgers and Coke. It's a really difficult balance for communities that need good work. And I think this is part of what we see in our communities, is that you allow people an opportunity to see what a successful filmmaker in a town like Wrexham or Bognor Regis or Caerphilly looks like. So hang on, so you're a filmmaker in Bognor Regis. You're a designer who works on global brands that I know and I recognize, and you're based a 2-minute walk away from my college campus. And there was a joke in Wrexham about how the Army Recruitment Centre was the most successful in the UK because it was right on the doorstep of the college. And people left college thinking, well, I'm not going to get a job locally, so what else am I going to do? And I think it's that sense of hope that's a lot of people in our communities, right? Everyone listening to this will know this. They'll look around the room, or they'll think about the members who use the space, and they're inspired every day. And for me, that was my main motivation with creating our spaces. Was I just wanted to work with people who brought out the best in me and made me feel like I could take on the world. That was my gap, my challenge to take on. And we've got, since the crisis hit, I've literally got a list of about 30 plus spaces that we have been invited to take a look at or open up. And for us, we don't want to turn into the Costa or the McDonald's of creating co-working spaces. We want to use our models of community management and the tools that we give local community managers to create these spaces, because I don't think the answer to this is a cookie cutter, let's open the same co-working space in every town center. It's about understanding what the needs of that community are and how you enable people to create the conditions that they want to succeed.
I would love it if we ended up with, and I've always thought. Firstly, I've always thought there were more people in an area that were interested in doing something than you might think. Because so many people think they need to leave town and go to the big smoke, and I was one of those people. And then I would love it if we ended up with like lots of kind of independent co-working spaces that are all kind of on the same frequency, because it'd be very easy for Town Square to sort of have 9 million sites across the country, and it would just like you say, turn into a cookie cutter thing. But there's a massive opportunity for people to find their voice in their local community and connect with other people and do that, and it will, I absolutely believe it will like generate this massive connected local hub, that the pub and the place of religion used to serve, probably when we were kids.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have extensive show notes. Like where can we send people? What do you want people to pay attention to? And anything you'd like to shout out about?
Yeah, so I mean, so our big thing that we've been working on is we really want to try and lock in some of this kind of commute change behavior. That's the thing where we see this being a big opportunity. So we're going to be launching a campaign pretty soon called Boot the Commute, and we'd love to get people's feedback and thoughts on that. So the best place is Twitter. So at Town Square, Town SQ is our Twitter handle, or for me, it's at Captain_Gareth. Or townsquare.co.uk, townsq.co.uk. I'd love to hear any thoughts or feedback, and we've talked about this, Bernard, right? The need for us in the UK to be better connected as a community, but also better connected to what's happening all over the world. That's where where the magic happens, is realizing that this is not an issue this is not what we see in our communities. What we're seeing in our communities and in our neighborhoods is being echoed all over the world. And that's super exciting.
It is. And I completely forgot to say, if you go to coworkingassembly.uk, we're holding back at the moment because as part of the European Co-working Assembly family that is, always growing. We have the UK Co-working Assembly. And the only reason I'm holding back is because the website's not quite ready. But just go there. There's lots of good stuff going on. And we're bringing together people around the UK. So thank you for spending your time with us today, ladies and gentlemen. Go to coworkingassembly.eu and wait 10 seconds and a little box will pop up saying join our email list, and do that. We email all the content and blogs and podcasts and everything else. We publish stories from around Europe and co-working every week, and you can always hit reply to that. It's the best way to get in touch with people is we send the email out and we say hit reply if you've got a story, and so many of you are, and we're really, really grateful for that. That's what's bringing all these stories and connections together around the co-working family. So say goodbye, Gareth.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Take care, folks.